It's an experience. I guess it's not just a show, but also it's near and dear to my heart just because I'm an infantry by trade. I'm frustrated with it because the guys that are going to fight the next war, they're not haven't been trained yet and they're not prepared. We've seen a lot of stuff in the GWAT where we pay so much for everything. We have all this amazing technology, but at the end of the day, what was killing us over there, I've gotten hit by them. You guys experience it. IEDs, was it $100? It's taking out multi-million-dollar tanks. It's stopping major operations, and it's a bunch of guys with det cord and a few 1.5 rounds from the Soviet era. It's the filmmaker side of me, and it's still the tactical side of me that still lives in that world and still keeps a pulse on it. So it was a show that I was really excited to direct and help guide.
Is that much of it? That's not much of a change for you, right?
My name is Kerry Kite. I used to load bombs in the Air Force, and now I'm a writer, a filmmaker, and an entrepreneur. Through using the post-9/11 GI Bill to go to college, working hourly jobs to pay the bills, and freelancing my way into a career, I've studied what it takes to successfully transition from service to civilian, and that study has become a conversation. On this podcast, I speak to other veterans, successful artists, and entrepreneurs about their transition, what they did well, where they failed, what they learned, and most importantly, how they applied their skills.
Episode 170 features my good buddy, Ethan Nagel, a veteran infantryman and filmmaker who lives at the intersection of modern warfare and modern media. Through partnerships with Jedok Labs and Vet TV, he is the director and editor of BattleLab.
Welcome. This is Veteran Made.
Our merch store is live at store.veteranmadeproductions.com. Grab hats, t-shirts, and hoodies in both performance and tri-blend cotton fabrics. Use code VM-5OFF for 5% off your purchase. Veteran Made is also sponsored by GoPills, a military-grade nootropic that contributes to brain health over time. Use code VM15 at checkout for 15% off. I get my collagen protein from Bubs Naturals, where you can use code VETERANMADE, all one word, at checkout for 20% off your order. We're also proud to partner with True Made Foods, which makes condiments free from added sugar and sweetened with real foods. Use code VET at checkout for 15% off. We love socks in this house. I get my wife new socks every Christmas. More importantly, we love American-grown and made socks. Use code VETERANMADE15 at rucksocks.com for 15% off. And lastly, I end my day with Rack Out from Bravo Actual to maintain quality sleep, resulting in a well-rested body and mind. Use code VETERANMADE with a space between the words at checkout for 15% off your order. Enjoy the episode.
Dude, let's dive in. Good afternoon from the great state of Ohio for me. Good morning still from the great state of Minnesota. Ethan Nagel, welcome back to Veteran Made.
Dude, thanks for having me back on. I love our conversations. This is awesome.
Yeah, man, this is great. We're freezing our asses off here in the Midwest. You always are in Minnesota this time of year, but it hit the rest of us this year down southeast in Columbus. We spent, I think, like 2 full weeks in negative territory. We had a snow week with the kindergartner and watched a lot of Marvel movies, read a lot of books, did some puzzles, just trying to make it work.
I'm telling you, man, I feel it's like I appreciate our stay. I love Minnesota. We get so cold though. We've had a crazy 2 to 3 week cold snap that I've never experienced probably since high school. So it's been over 20 years. And we've been in the negatives in single digits, and we're getting down the negative 22s. Every night was negative 17s. It's just cold. It's just a cold, and it just hangs in the air.
Yeah.
So you look outside, you're like, oh, it's beautiful, sunny. You step out, and it like takes your breath away. You're like, oh, it's like hard to breathe. And this winter is it's like we were good all the way up until about mid-January ish. And I've never seen it this cold in January. It's always February that we get like this weird cold snap, but it's only lasts for like 2 days, and then it'll jump to 30s, and then we're fine. But we've had this crazy 2-3 week cold snap, and it's I walk downstairs and I close my barn door and I have a heater going, and I step outside of it, and it's like my basement is freezing. So it's just like I'm down there with like my Carhartt. Like before I had to put on a new shirt because I look like a bum because I have like the super thick Carhartt that has been washed in like 3 days, and I'm like in my slippers like editing 8 hours a day. So but I
told my wife this morning, I was like, oh, it's gonna get into the 20s today. I can go out to the garage and work out with a couple of space heaters because the last few weeks it's been so cold. I mean, you're a movie guy, you'll appreciate this. My daughter's, she turned 6 as of this going live. She will be 6 already. She'll be 6 in like a week. So at the beginning of the snow kind of weekend, it started snowing like crazy on Saturday night, Sunday. And she was like watching something. She's like, "Hey, can I watch something?" I'm like, "Sure." So she was like watching some kid show or whatever. And my wife and I have been talking recently anyway about, like, I think you and I have talked about this, like, not watching crap, not watching slop, and so much of this
Mhm.
kids is just slop. Not to, like, all the political stuff, obviously, but then you just watch some of this and like the way that these people talk, and like kids don't need to hear that.
Mhm.
I'm like, dude, let's start showing her the Marvel movies. Like, she watches Spidey and Amazing Friends. Like, she loves the characters. So we started with Iron Man on the snow week and just like watched a bunch
Nice.
of movies like all the way through. We watched Black Widow the other night, and she's into it, man. She's like asking, she's like a budding filmmaker. She's like, well, why did we see that person now? Like, how come that
Oh,
character is coming
wow.
doing this? And my wife and I are looking at each other like, yes,
Yes, yes.
ask the
Yep.
question. Ask
Yep.
the question.
We're starting to go down that same road too. Is like how I can't wait to like sit her down and watch the classics and
Yeah.
like the ones I grew up on. She's my daughter's 4.5. She turns 5 in about 3 months. So in that, I think 6 is a good age where we're like, we start showing her like the beginning of Indiana Jones, like the Last Crusade,
Yeah.
not the first one, because
Yeah, of
it's like
course.
people are dying. I mean, you kind of see that, but it's more swashbuckling.
Yeah.
And I was like, can we watch The Mummy? And she's like, and my wife's like, unless you want to have it at nightmares. I'm like, yeah, it's still a
Yeah.
little, it's still a little young for that. So I'm excited though to get
It
to
is
that point, because
so much fun.
my kids they can hold their attention,
Yeah.
and they've both been able to watch shows and movies since they were both like 1. So, which I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but it's I can't wait to bust out the collection in the next few years downstairs, like on my wall, and just be like, all
Yeah.
right, movie nights, like Face
Oh,
Off and The Rock.
yeah, totally. Yeah. Yes. You and I we can turn. We need
Mhm.
to start our Michael Bay appreciation podcast between the two of us, where we just wax poetic about his brilliance. But
Absolutely.
I think as long as they're watching long form stuff, and it's like cinematic
Mhm.
and there's a quality to it. And obviously, you're a filmmaker. My wife and I are filmmakers, so it's not like we're mindlessly watching these things like we talk about it. We showed her Last Crusade over the Christmas break. We were like hanging out. We were down in Florida hanging out with some friends, and it was like a mid morning, kind of like in between going to the pool and doing some other stuff. And we like just went on Apple TV and just threw some stuff on. And I'm like, dude, let's watch Last Crusade. It's one of my favorite
Yeah,
movies ever. It's my
it's
favorite of all
awesome.
the movies. And she sat and watched the whole thing, and she was like into it and wasn't not paying attention. She was paying attention. And yeah, I mean, we read a lot, and she also watches us read, so it's not like it's
Mhm.
the only thing. We don't have screens on all the time. But I think as long as
Mhm.
they're watching long form, good quality cinema,
Yeah,
it's probably good.
yeah, I agree with you. I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
All right. So I had you on, I've had you on twice. I had you on in the early days.
Early days, yeah.
And I came up there and went on your pod, and we talked so
Yep.
much. Maybe it feels like I've had you on more than I have, but
Yeah, I was just saying, yeah.
excited to chat BattleLab. Excited to hear kind of like what you've been up to. So yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
take us into that. Like, what's BattleLab? What are you guys doing at Vet TV? Like, just give us the brief rundown, and then we'll jump into some specifics.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Battle Lab is a series where basically we take modern issues and tactics and we start applying them to the battlefield, essentially. So, the new big thing right now is FPV attack drones. So you're going to see a lot of the show kind of focus on that a lot more, because that's a brand new tactic that really is bogging everyone down. You're seeing it out of Ukraine and whatnot. So Battle Lab is a conglomeration of a few different companies, not just Vet TV. So to kind of start from the beginning, there's a company called Reveal Tech. It's actually owned by the CEO is a former recon Marine, Garrett Smith. Garrett Smith, I believe. Wow. I gotta make sure I get that right. But Garrett, we always just Garrett. And anyways, a former, or he still is actually, I believe he's still in the reserves. So he's a former infantry recon Marine, reserves, deployed and everything. He started this company basically as it's a mapping software. It's called Reveal Tech. Well, they had reached out to John because the COO of Reveal Tech had gone to, I think, infantry school or whatever, OCS with John, the CEO of Vet TV. And this was before I was hired on for Vet TV. And so he reached out to John, was like, hey, I have this idea. We want to start getting known in the space of kind of like, long story short, basically the Black Rifle Coffee of the tactical space. So he reaches out to John, was like, hey, we want to build our brand. We want to do this, blah, blah, blah. John was like, hey, Ethan's probably the guy that you should talk to. He knows tactics, film director, in and out of Ukraine. Still have my finger on the pulse of a lot of what's going on in the modern battlefield and or what's going on overseas. And so he we talked, myself and Andrew Dixon and Reveal. And after a few rounds of talks, they went back to John and was like, hey, we want you to shoot this. And then John came back and was like, okay, but I'm hiring Ethan to direct it. So it's just like this giant circle that went around. So essentially what happened was I got hired on to Vet TV as a creative director and to direct this series specifically, as well as some other potential series down the road. So BattleLab was born. Reveal Tech, they wanted to basically kind of start integrating their software, but also just being like, hey, we're also trying to develop tactics as well. The people that we use to display those tactics are former tier 1 operators that have retired or had gotten out of the unit. And so they that company is called Jedoc, and they're based out of North Carolina, over in the Circle Pines, Southern Pines area. And so essentially we all three came together and we shot, they come up with the training. We obviously come up with production at Vet TV, and Reveal comes up with funding and also some tactics that they wanted to test out and technology that needs to be tested. So the series basically, like I said, based off of scenarios that have played out overseas and or what's currently happening. And like I said, Ukraine is a very big where people are developing new tactics, or you're seeing new things happening and developing. And the U.S. military is not keeping up. Like, no matter what everyone says, even, the last 3 years for sure, and even now they're trying to catch up, and it's still like the tactics and the technology isn't there. And so there's kind of a push for this. So back in July, we did start filming, and we got some of these guys to basically run through these tactics of what we're doing, and we filmed it and put it all together in a show. And basically, if you're an infantryman and or a tactical bro, whatever you want to do, or just want to be in the know on how to actually defeat and or help adapt, or if you have your own ideas, this is kind of the show for you. Because essentially we're taking these very highly skilled tier 1 operators, and they're going up against drones and using them it's in different scenarios, which is offense and a defense. So basically one team has FPV strike drones and bomber drones, and the others don't. So it's kind of like classic tactics and modern developing tactics. And they kind of go head to head, what works, what doesn't. And that's the show. And so you kind of see, how do you defend a position against bomber drones? And FPV strike drones? How do you use basically kind of FPV strike drones as a support by fire position, support by fire element, reconnaissance element, and then how do you use it on the offense and also on the defense of what you're doing. So if you're defending a building, how do you use strike drones? And then if you're on the offense going to take a building, how would you use those same drones? And right away, the show goes into it. You see the failure of the drones, and you also see the extent of damage the drones can do. So it's an experience. It's really, and I guess it's not just a show, but also it's near and dear to my heart, just because I'm an infantry by trade, and so I see a lot of the frustration out of our military. Like, I'm frustrated with it because the guys that are going to fight the next war, haven't been trained yet, and they're not prepared. And we've seen a lot of stuff in the GWAT where we pay so much for everything. We have all this amazing technology, but at the end of the day, what was killing us over there? I've gotten hit by them. You guys experience it. IEDs, was it $100? It's taking out multi-million-dollar tanks. It's stopping major operations, and it's a bunch of guys with det cord and a few 1.5 rounds from the Soviet era. It's so you have to adapt the tactics, and then we don't need a $300,000 missile every time we need to strike somebody. We need something that is much more attritable, cost effective, et cetera. So it's a little bit more like I go both sides. It's the filmmaker side of me, and it's still the tactical side of me that still lives in that world and still keeps a pulse on it. So it was a show that I was really excited to direct and help guide. It went through a few different iterations of how we were going to edit it and then deliver the final product. So yeah.
Yeah. So obviously a handful of threads to pull on there. I want to come back to being a marriage of your two worlds, of your two interests. Then I want to talk a little bit about the sort of like gamified concepts that you're describing. But first, let's talk about like you personally, like your excitement for this. And I think it's really important too to understand a lot of people in our community want to get into creative work that want to get into this space and create things. And obviously there's a ton in the tactical space. There's a ton in the apparel space. There's a ton in the sort of like D2C space, whether it's coffee or apparel or products or supplements or like whatever. But this is an interesting spin on the tactical space, right? So like rather than just shooting a sexy sizzle of tier 1 guys going into a building and clearing it and like doing all of this for commercial purposes, you've taken this gamified concept with an eye toward, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but with an eye towards, hey, U.S. government, hey, U.S. military, pay attention to this. Because what I thought about while you were talking was, infantry guys and soft forces at the very, very beginning of the GWAT were getting trained on Vietnam era tactics by their cadre at the schools, right? And then coming out of, boot camp or going to the schools, Jack Carr's talked about, a lot of people have talked about it over the years, like, hey, got to our first unit and we're getting trained on Vietnam era tactics. Then we deploy to the Middle East or Southwest Asia, and it's completely different. Urban combat, mountain combat, all these different things that we weren't necessarily trained on. We have to learn on the fly. Then we go through 20 plus rotations over the course of X number of years. And to your point, Ethan, we're I don't want to say losing, but right, we're taking losses from guys in flip flops, AK-47s, and det cord and whatever. So obviously a lot to unpack there, but I want to hear, so for you, like this is a marriage of your two worlds and your two interests. How did you begin to attack it? Like as a concept and then getting into pre-production to be like, okay, I'm the guy who should direct this. Here's what I know that you all want as stakeholders. How did you bring the vision to say, let's create this game and here's how I'm going to shoot it. And then here's how I'm going to figure out how to edit it.
Yeah. So initially extended to, as we all know as filmmakers, it's all about teamwork. So I was hired on to direct it. It's kind of like Reveal and John, Garrett and John or Jedok and the companies. It's kind of like their baby, and I'm coming in to direct, which is, I think a lot of times, you as a commercial director and everything, like you're hired on by a company to direct their product. You know what I mean? Like you don't own the product. You're there to make it look awesome. And then you move on to the next project. So for this one, it worked out that it married my two worlds, but I'm also there to direct a product that was presented to me. At first we went through a few different iterations, and also too, the reason you hire me is not just to slap GoPros on everybody and call it a day. So right away I was like, how do we make this look great? Look great, look legit. And then I'll be editing on the back end. One, because I know what's going on out there and there's going to be so much footage that I'm going to have to create these stories and or these rounds, essentially these iterations that they're doing, and making sure I pick out the right moments because I'm a tactician myself. You can't hand this off to a kid coming out of USC because he's not going to know what the hell's going on. You're going to have to be able to tell that story, but also tell it truthfully, but also shorten a 15-minute round down to 3 minutes to get to the points that matter. So while we were going through the iteration, right away, at first we actually were going to make it like a sports broadcast. So the very first production was was huge. Like, I shouldn't say huge. It was big compared to what we do now. So like season 1, that's now launched, is currently on Vet TV. Go subscribe, check it out. We had actually had a booth with 2 commentators. We were running a live stream through Teradek. And what we did is that the drone operator from the sky had a Teradek attached to his drone controller, feeding into the commentators, 2 commentators. And then we had 2 Ronin 4Ds because they have the stabilized gimbal. They had an integrated system for the Teradek. I'm sorry. Yes, for sorry, no, was not Teradek. It was a Teradek-like system. It was DJI's system. So take that back. It was the DJI transmission system that you can attach to the Ronin 4D. And so we were running around with two of those, one per team. And then that feed would go back to the commentators. So then we'd had three feeds going at the same time. And it was funny. We learned a lot that first season, and so it was intense setup. We had an RV where I was slapping, these transmitters and receivers up on an RV, like 30 feet in the air. We had to make sure and this was in July in North Carolina, so it was hot. It was rough. And running the cords down, SDI cords, and then we had to make sure all the GoPros were good to go, audio. It was a pretty big challenge on that aspect. And like I said, I know there's shows like 20 times bigger than ours that they do this all the time, but we're a pretty relatively small crew, big for us, but smaller on the grand scheme of other shows. And the funny part is it's not a live production. So even though we're sending a live feed over, it was going to be all edited on the back end, right? So we had multiple cameras going. I mean, I think we had 6 cameras. And then we had 8 GoPros plus the Ronin so we had like 12 GoPros going at one point. So technically that's how we shot it. And at first it was commentary. It was like, oh guys, they're coming around the corner and blah, 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 blah. And oh, there they are, the drone coming out of the wood line. And we thought that might be a good way to like gamify and bring excitement to the rounds. And initially we were going to have it completely play out, all 15 minutes, and then with the commentary. And then after the first iteration, we're like, nope, not going to work. not going to keep.
Why wasn't it going to work? I mean, so this is one of the hardest things. I mean, regardless of doing something multicam, mixed media like you're talking about, or even just a 30-second TV commercial, right? You take a concept in a deck, you storyboard it out, and then you go to actually produce it. And then you find out that it doesn't work, and cooler heads have to prevail, right? Because you have to work, like you said, as a team to decide like what is and isn't working about this, and the elements that aren't working, how do we pull them out? Do we need to reshoot? Is it pickups? Do we have what we need in the can and we can actually edit, make it work? So yeah, talk to us about what wasn't working and how you all worked together to iterate it.
Right. Yeah. So once we got the first cut in, that I cut, and I cut everything, but I mean, that first iteration that we went through, we took 2 rounds, one that was offense and, X-ray and alpha, each one on offense, and we put them together. And it was probably about a 40-minute episode, right? And I'm like, this is going to take a long time because we had each game, so there's 3 episodes total: Strong Point, Contested Exfil, and Organic Strike. Strong Point had 8 rounds. Contested Exfil had 6. Organic Strike had 4. So you're looking at how many episodes that is. It's a lot to cut. And so what we ended up doing is like we showed it to people, and it just wasn't holding attention. A live event is a live event, so unless it's like happening, you know what I mean? Like to re-show that, it's like if you watch a football game, do you really care to watch the whole football game on Monday morning, or do you want to see the highlights? That's unless you're there or it's being live streamed in that moment, it's just not going to work. And the commentators were great. We had my buddy Chris Naganuma, who I went to Ukraine with, and he works for Reveal Tech now. And we had Cameron Pfaff, who's actually been on a bunch of Netflix series and stuff. He's a former Ranger. Great dude. Great. They did really well. It's just that at the end of the day, it's not what we needed. We needed to cut all of that, because it wasn't about seriousness. It was just kind of like them talking back and forth and giving commentary. But we're like, this isn't exactly where the series needs to go. So we had to cut all that out. And then what we did is we did a studio day with Alpha Team Leader and X-Ray Team Leader. And they're the owners of Jedoc. And we had them watch the rounds, and then they gave their feedback on each round. And then we cut it into the series. We cut it into each round. So as you're watching, at certain moments, so if there's a little bit of a lull in the episode, you'll get feedback on why they did it at that time, and why it made sense at that time, and how it played out. Because they're like, hey, I thought this happened, and so I went to point A instead of point B. We thought this would be a good thing. It didn't work. Or we did this and it did work. and that's war. It's the fog of war. So they're kind of giving, they're not armchair quarterbacking it, but they're like, this is the reason we did those things.
It's like a retrospective.
Exactly. And it's happening in real time during the round. And then at the very end of the round, we do a hot wash, and they're in the studio and they're talking about what they did for like a minute. So then you get a real overview of like, what worked and what didn't work. And that's got Garrett is kind of hosting, and then Alpha and team leaders, Phil and Jared are essentially talking through it. And so that's how we kind of structured everything. We end up going into that format, which is now what it is now, which is now it's only 3 episodes. Each scenario is an episode in itself. And, so Strong Point has eight rounds. So we go through 8 rounds in about 40 minutes. And that's what we wanted, the sweet spot for infantry guys to watch, keep their attention, but to also kind of hit the highlights on what's working, what's not, and I think this goes to a broader picture when it comes to the GWAT, SOF, and conventional military. The GWAT, God bless us all. Towards the end, everyone became complacent. The guys when I was there, we weren't complacent on the ground and fighting, but when it came to tactics and it came to hire and it came to development of new technologies, it was very slow. Everyone thinks that we're just going to be fighting dudes, in flip-flops and man jams, and no conventional military action is going to happen ever again. They treat GWAT tactics in a conventional manner. So this is before Ukraine kicked off. I was in the National Guard and I saw it firsthand myself. Like, if you're fighting China and one Black Hawk helicopter goes down, the battalion would freeze. They go, oh my God, get all the resources, everyone freeze, we need to recover the bird. And I remember sitting there being like, one of the few things that came out of Vietnam that you could apply is, why are we even recovering this helicopter? Blow it in place and replace it. The helicopter in Vietnam was the Humvee. You read stories about pilots getting shot down 3 times in an operation. They go back to the airfield, get in a helicopter, turn it on, and go. Why is these, because everything's coming so expensive, and it's about, accountability. Make sure we always have our gear. It's I remember before the Ukraine war kicked off, I was like, this is not sustainable this is a terrible tactic, and guess what happened? Ukraine kicks off, and everything with, not everything, but a lot of our tactics that we had is thrown out the window, and not even the infantry tactics. To me, and this isn't a slight at the soft guys, but the soft tactics are gone. Like, little birds aren't coming in to save you. You don't have an AC-130 gunship that's going to, you won't have the U.S. military behind you because it's getting shot out of the sky. No one's coming for you. That golden hour that we had, it's gone. You might get extracted in 2 hours, or you might get extracted in a week. So, and these are real stories that I've captured, that everyone else has captured from day one. All bets are off. So it's nice seeing these guys, seeing the series put some of these tactics to play. And part of the goal too of BattleLab eventually down the road is to help integrate it into training with the U.S. military and or bring squad level tactics on, because it's cool seeing these tier 1 operators go at it. But even myself and John, we're in the editing bay, and I'm like, why are they doing that? Well, it's because they're hostage rescue. They're SMU. They get on a little bird, they fly in, they hit the ground, they sprint. And by the way, it's super impressive. It really is. And they go in, boom, boom, boom. But then there's parts where they do that tactic and it doesn't work. As me, an infantry guy, and I'm not even trying to armchair quarterback. I'm just like, oh, why aren't you using communication better than this? Like, why are you, and so, because these tactics, they're not meant, you can use them for soft capabilities, but it's we see it more in an army, in an infantry sense, back to conventional warfare, because that's what we're seeing in Ukraine. That's what we're seeing, currently, and that's what you're seeing with China, adversarial, whatever. They're getting a lot into drones, but you have to know the capability of these drones. It's always, the new shiny object is drones. Very true, very relevant, clearly. But it's everyone's throwing, they're putting a pedestal up high here when they should be thinking about things over here. they're like, oh my God, swarm drones. Swarm drones, don't worry about. Don't worry about swarm drones. Don't invest $100 million into trying to develop swarm drones. Develop a drone that you press the button, it turns on, it connects to your it binds your controller, and it's off. And you pull a pin on it like a grenade and go. That's what you need, and it costs $800. It's those little tactics or those little things that people are focused on the big picture, but not in the right lane. It's like, it's frustrating, but it's also cool to see development. But BattleLab kind of does that. They go, what is working, what's not, and it truly is seeing these operators and their former infantry guys themselves. They get frustrated because they're trying to attack an objective, and a bomber and a drone, strike drone, is just perched up, and it goes, and it just hits them.
Yeah,
and it's over. And another one comes, hits them, and how are you attacking a building, that's fortified, and then these FPV strike drones are ready. So, it's really cool to see integration of this new tactic. Not that your tactics have to be developed all the way around these things, but it's definitely a tool in the toolbox that needs to be evaluated, and that needs to be that should be predominantly in the forefront of everyone's minds when they're thinking about warfare, because this isn't going away. It's like IEDs. These are now flying IEDs controlled by, the local boy from Kentucky who's really, really good at pulling things apart and putting them back together. That's going to be your most lethal adversary and your greatest asset. Is that 19-year-old kid that came on an ASVAB waiver, and he's figuring out how to take out $20 million tanks with a $500 drone.
Yeah, it's like different mission sets require different strategy, and then different tactics as well. And like you also talk about, the military industrial complex. It's always like bigger, better, and more, right? And we constantly hear about, I heard about this in the Air Force with like the next gen fighters, right? And then my guys would go work on those next gen fighters, and they'd be like, yeah, I mean, these are cool and they're sexy and they look awesome, but the A-10 and the F-15 and the F-16 and the B-52 work really, really, really well. Why are we investing all of this time, energy, and manpower into this next gen that actually can't do the things that we know the troops in contact on the ground are going to need, right, for close air support, or reconnaissance that we already have? Like, we don't need all of that. We don't need air to ground, air to air, and reconnaissance in some next gen fighter that's just going to break, right? And it's super expensive, to your point. So it's an interesting thing to think about, how entertainment, right, how content can help inform the people that are making some of these decisions. Not that we necessarily expect them to pay attention and listen, right? But the more that we flood the market, right, with this one series, and you're able to develop it further, multiple seasons and different things, like there's a way that you can crack that infrastructure, right, to get people to see that, hey, we can spend less money, we can be more efficient with our funds, and we can be better with our strategy and our tactics in order to win the actual next war that we're going to fight, not the one that you've been paid to think we're going to fight.
Yep. Yeah. And exactly. I think coming back to the series, or, that was my big rant on the series, but it's all integrated. But with the series too, there's a lot of awesome content out there. A good friend of mine, Joey Hahn, he's, former dev group. He's part of GBRS group, Global Battle Response, or whatever, GBRS, right? Really awesome on the internet. They do a lot of great range stuff, real good CQB. And I think there's a really good lane for that. I think that's awesome. Really good brand lifestyle kind of thing. But I think this BattleLab is something that needs to be, no one's done it yet. And once in a while you see somebody on YouTube come up with something, but it's more of a fun little, video that they do, opposed to this is being created to show the next generation, or the current generation of warfighter infantrymen, how they should be training. And BattleLab fills that void. And we've already improved on it. So season 1 is out. Season 2, production wise, we tightened everything up. We no longer do the live broadcast stuff because it didn't make the cut. We do it leaner and meaner, with production. So me and you, like, we understand that. Like, I'm a cam operator now. Like, we already know what we want and need. and our workflow from all the GoPros and how we use them, as well as the FPV drones. That was the other technical issue, a little behind the scenes, is as much as tier one guys say that something works, it doesn't mean it works, and they're great. They're like, yeah, I think it's recording. They had their FPV drones, and they're like, oh yeah, it should be recording. I'm like, cool, is it recording? They're like, yeah, and then we get back like, oh yeah, the headset wasn't recording. So we're like, by the third day, again, production stuff, we're like, we're going to take our GoPros and we're going to strap them onto these things. They're like, yeah, let's do that. Because by day 3, they're like, we can't guarantee we're recording anything. So the second season, we were much more prepared, and we have, our myself as cam op and our other cam op and another guys, it's like, make sure that's recording. Now, this has come from the production standpoint, because that is going to be vital to when, how people are viewing things, how lethal and fast these things are, if you're integrating them into other tactics other than just striking, or if they're assisting you in reconnaissance, or you are assaulting a position, and when you're it's a support by fire. So it is, production wise, making sure we capture that angle is to make, because we come down, you see a drone and it just comes right in. And so you see how fast these things move, not only from the outside, us filming, but from the view of the drone. Now, we see it a lot when it comes to the Ukraine, but if you're not, if you're in the infantry and you're not watching Ukraine war footage right now, you're wrong. But if you're not, then if you're watching BattleLab, you're seeing how fast these things can move. But yeah, that's on the production side of the house. But yeah, it's every step of the way we're evolving to make sure, one, the series is better, two, it's more proficient, but also that there's much more learning curves. Like where we did a hostage rescue, essentially crisis evacuation, they called it. For season 2, we also did a strike drill, to where guys get into positions and then they connect to a link, and then the drones are connected, and then they take off. A lot of tech issues. A whole round didn't work, for Alpha Team. Just, all that type of stuff. And that happens in season 1 a lot. You see the drone feed cuts out. So these drones become paperweights. They can't communicate back with their guys, which is, they're using, comm equipment, but and they're only like 200 meters away, because of the playing field that we're doing. And part of me was just like, yeah, man, like you got to have your, comm is king, even not mistakes, but things go wrong at every single level, so it's nice seeing things play out in real time, opposed to like people talking about it. Like, hey, me and you are talking about this, but what happens when you watch it and see it on a show in real time, and, it brings a lot more gravity to the situation. So, for people in the now I say tactical space, but like in that space, in the tactical space, this type of content will absolutely help our warfighters understand the new threat, and also new tactics that they can take advantage of and that they're aware of. Because, God forbid we get into a conventional war, like a true conventional war. Yes, we have our assets, but it's going to get rough. And these drones, to help knowing how to counter these drones, but also use them as an asset, is huge. So seeing that play out in the series is really cool. So, and I think there is definitely a space for it, and we're trying to get the word out as much as we can, just with our own marketing. But yeah, it's you see, and again, nothing against this, but you see a lot of the CQB. It's like, awesome, man, that's sexy. Everyone runs CQB. It's awesome, it's great for Instagram. Nothing against it, but this type of stuff is like, hey man, we're on an open field, multiple buildings, and a drone is supporting you, and you're running across the field, and then there's one coming at you, and then you still have to assault the building. And by the way, it doesn't mean if you get past the drones that you're going to assault the building properly. So that's the real stuff people see, because hey, CQB is great, man, but like you're seeing trench clearing, all that kind of stuff. And I believe we'll probably start getting into that soon. Like I said, we already shot season 2. Season 3 is in Montana, so we're still trying to figure out what that's going to look like. And then season 5 is confirmed. We're heading to Hawaii. So there's the series also is not just about FPV drones. It's also about how do you get people out of certain situations, technology, and clandestine operations. So there's a lot of awesome stuff coming up. But season 1, which is live now, is definitely much more heavy on the tactics side with integration of FPV strike drones, bomber drones, but also how do you integrate those into modern tactics?
So as a filmmaker, like obviously I know your taste, like you're a cinema guy, right? Like you like to shoot cinematically, and this is a mixed media approach. So
Yes.
2 questions. Like one, how is that for you as a filmmaker being like, all right, there's the cool, sexy way I would want to shoot all of this, but then there's the necessity of how I need to capture all of this to edit it together. So that's one, like on the art side. And then on the tactic side, like as a tactician, as a veteran, as somebody who's interested in ensuring that the stakeholders make correct decisions moving forward, like we talked about earlier. How do you approach as director and editor, creative director, blending entertainment with capturing it honestly, truthfully, and as tightly as possible, so that each episode lives as a piece of content like it should? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So one, it's like always making it look good, but you also have to be mobile. So that's where we chose the Ronin 4D. Vet TV had owned one, but I had already been leaning in that direction because I didn't want to have multiple independent systems, just because you need to work fast and you need to work reliably. So having a Ronin with like the traditional gimbal with like the A7S III is kind of you have a multiple screens. So the Ronin 4D worked great in that aspect of, one, it's fully integrated, it's got the system, it's shooting raw, the autofocus is phenomenal, but it also has the option to shoot to swap out lenses. So we shot on 24 to 70 millimeter 2.8 G2 masters, so they're the lighter new versions, and we can zoom in, and it's gimbal. So everything's integrated. You press record, it's good. You don't have to worry about stuff. So it's getting rid of a bunch of redundancies, or getting rid of a bunch of steps in the process, because we have to move fast. So technically that's what we shot with. And the image looks great. You're shooting 2.8, 24 to 70. So you get the wide, you can do punch-ins. So when they're thinking, or what they're doing, is when we're shooting, and it's getting that emotion of what's going on. So, our camera guys, as myself, in season 1, we had 2 camera operators. In season 2, I'm filming myself, as well as my buddy Ace, who's also another filmmaker. We said, hey, think like filmmakers. Think of the angles, but think of the emotion. GoPros are there because GoPros can capture everything, like them running stuff that we wouldn't be able to get because they're working on, if the team splits up and whatnot. So that also helps. And then we put cameras inside the buildings if that's a need. And then we have the drones, like a cinema drone, Mavic 4 is up filming as a whole for us. And then we have the tactical drones, which are either FPV drones, they are Autel drones, or another DJI drone that the team uses. So then we capture that footage as well. But yeah, putting it all together and basically making it exciting. I mean, that comes down to the edit, and that comes down to music selection, but it also is still making sure we have the highlights, the things that lead up to the highlights, the reasons why, and then the payoff, and then, essentially the entire round itself. And that's actually pretty fun. So it's a lot of action. You get the music, the crescendos in there. That helps keep the audience's attention, as you know. And if you're someone that loves movies, or people that just watch content, how much music makes or breaks an edit. So we kind of have that laid out, and then we make sure that when someone gets shot, we have like, hey, X-ray 1's dead, or Alpha 2's dead, to tell the audience, who got shot where. And sometimes from the drone top angle, we'll like highlight little box, like, hey, this is Alpha, this is X-ray. And as they're closing in, you see, we identify who's who. And that does help, because you just have to tell the audience sometimes, hey, this is that person. And we have little HUD screens to make sure people are aware of which angles which. And so, yeah, that's how we kind of make sure we convey to the audience what's going on, but also conveying what we need to tell them on what's going on.
Yeah, I love it. The fundamentals never change, right? It doesn't matter what kind of content you're making, whether it's an action blockbuster, or an A24 drama, or a sizzle, or a commercial, or whatever. The fundamentals never change, right? You have to tell the story. You have to get the information to the audience the way that they need it.
Yeah. And sometimes it just looks great. Like I wrote shooting on the Ronin, it's a cinema camera, and you just can tell You just tell, it's not, I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, we could shoot on A7 S3s and they would still look the same and look great. It's just or being to shoot on those full frames and with real lenses and real glass, at one point they're like, well, we just use GoPros. And I'm like, we're not doing that. It's like, then don't hire me. You know what I mean? Like my name's attached to this project. So, there's a lot that can go wrong by all means, but like, I want to make sure I can control what I can control.
Yep.
So those Ronins give that extra element of cinema quality, and that this series isn't messing around, and the GoPros actually connect the dots. They capture everything, but they connect the dots of the story.
Well, the mixed media approach works really well. Like I've started to find that in even my own work on the documentary side. We're working on a couple of short docs right now, doing a lot on the social media content side. Like mixed media is great. We were oversaturated with cinematic commercials for a long time, then oversaturated with TikTok and IG style stuff all the time. And then now we're starting to marry the worlds and see this mixed media approach, which is great. All right. I got a fussy baby here.
No worries.
Yeah. My wife has to go volunteer at our doctor's school. We both have calls here in about 6 minutes. So we respect things up. Ethan, as you know, well, first tell us where we can find you and the series, and then I'll ask the last question.
Yes, you can find me at Ethan Nagel or ethan.nagel.films on Instagram. You can also find my podcast show at Into the Breach Show on Instagram. Also at Into the Breach on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. It's going on Vet TV, but we're still setting up that page. And then Patreon as well for if you want to support the channel. And then BattleLab is at BattleLab HQ on Instagram. You can go check out Vet TV at vettv.com to go check out BattleLab in itself, or go check out Jedoc or Reveal Tech, and then they'll help with all that. But if you go all those pages, but go check out BattleLab on Vet TV and go subscribe and watch the channel. That'd be awesome. It helps us out.
I love it. Yeah, we'll collab with all those folks on content. So Ethan, as you know, to end each episode of the podcast, ask an open-ended question. What's on your heart and your mind for our community right now? It could be a piece of advice, something you want to get off your chest, or something you want to reiterate that we've talked about today. But Ethan, what's on your heart? What's on your mind?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I think this is more of an existential crisis, not existential crisis of myself, but one, just keep at your career and take stock of what you've done. Right now I'm in a weird funk. I've talked to my wife where I'm just trying to make sure, like, my goal is to direct films, multi-million-dollar films, right? I love making docs, and I've had a really, really, really good career. But I think sometimes, like, keep your goals, keep moving towards them, but also take stock in what you've done. Cause it's like one of those woe is me moments where I'm like, man, what am I doing with my life? And then you have to like look back and like, oh dude, I do underwater cinematography. I've done all these crazy documentaries. I've shot some really cool commercials. So I guess that's what's on my mind recently is like, one, building the podcast, but also working towards that ultimate goal of directing films. But as we're all in this space, you and me included, we talked about everybody, when you go into film school, thinks they're going to be the next Michael Bay or Ridley Scott. And I think that's tough for us to keep playing out. I still believe that, but it's hard because you start getting older and you're just like, oh my God, but you're still working towards that end. But also sometimes you just got to you can't be depressed about what's not there yet. Just take stock of what you've done and that, and just then start moving forward to be like, hey man, like life's pretty damn good. So I guess for those of the filmmakers that are out there thinking they're stuck in a rut or they're not getting where they want to go, just keep grinding it out. The leaf will turn over and, you'll start getting where you want to go, or you're still making money to where then you have to create your own path. So I guess that's been on my mind recently. There's other world events too, on everyone's minds, but that's been on mine,
That's a phenomenal answer, man. I mean, professionally, you got to do that. And then personally too, I'm holding a beautiful, almost 7-month-old in my arms right now. And she's laughing and smiling and putting her thumb in her mouth. And it's like, I take stock of what I have, and it's a couple of beautiful kids and a wife. And I know you've got the same. So
exactly.
Relationally, whatever it is, just like go out, touch grass, breathe air, and remember that you're on a very, very long journey.
Yep. Exactly. So
Ethan, appreciate you, brother. Always love chatting, especially fun when we record.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely, brother. Take care.
Good.